Hi everyone, Rachel here. I recently wrote a blog post about a new method of Bible study that I've been using. It's kind of a hybrid method that's based on Bible quilt journaling, but it's designed to be a little bit more straightforward and linear for studying lengthy passages. And if you want to learn more about what that is, how it came about, why I did it, you can read the blog post. I'll link it down below. But I was asked if I would make a video of how I go about doing that, so this is where this video is coming in. This process is a kind of a two-stage process. There's an initial digital stage where you're kind of formatting the text and all that and getting it ready to print, and then more of a hands-on, tactile type second stage. If I can figure out the logistics of it, I will do that second part in a separate video, but in this video we're going to show you how to do the first digital stage. So in a moment I'm going to show you my computer screen and I'm actually going to walk you through how I do that, but first I wanted to talk about what it is I'm actually using. So my Bible software is eSword. It's free software. It's available for all of the major platforms. There are a number of modules available for various various Bible translations that are available in there for free, but if you have a very specific translation in mind that you prefer, you may have to invest a small fee one time in getting that module, because a lot of the modern ones, New King James, English Standard Version, NIV, things like that, those are proprietary and eSword has to license those. So for instance, I'm using the New King James Version. I paid, I think, $15 or $25 or something like that one time to buy that module, and I've been using it for years. Then for my word processing program, I'm using LibreOffice, which is also free. It's open source software. It's available for Windows. I think it's available for Mac. It's similar to Word, but it's different than Word. So if you're using something like Microsoft Word, you should be able to do all of the same things that I'm going to show you here in this video, but they might be someplace a little bit different in your navigation. They may even be called something a little bit different. So you might have to fuss around a little in your navigation bar to find where exactly those things are. But in this video, I'm going to head over to show you my computer. When you open up eSword, it's going to look something like this with modules laid out around the screen. Yours may or may not look exactly like mine depending on how you decided to set yours up, but you should have multiple modules here. And the important thing at this point is to make sure that whatever Bible translation it is that you want to copy is the active Bible module selected. So if you're not sure about that, click on the tab for the Bible that you want to make sure that's the one that's displaying. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come up to the navigation bar, select Bible, and scroll down until you find Copy Verses. That's going to open up a dialog for you. As you'll see, there are drop downs for the book, the starting chapter and verse, the ending chapter and verse. So let's select the book that we want. We're going to make sure that we're starting with 1 and 1, and then we're going to go down and we're going to choose the last chapter and the last verse, and that should update everything in here so that we have the full span of the book selected. Now, these numbers here will give you different layouts. As you can see, every time I change these, it gives me a little bit of a different format. Number 2 is the one that I prefer for this purpose, so select that and then click Copy. That's going to put it on your clipboard. Then you're going to go over to your word processing software and you want to paste this in. Now you can do I think it's Control-Shift-V, it might be Control-Alt-V, and that will give you the options, or go to Edit, Paste, and paste unformatted text. And so that's going to just give you just straightforward text in whatever is your default font size. Now go in here, the top and the bottom margin can be whatever you want. I want the left at 0.75 inches and the right at 4.25 inches, and that's going to give me the right kind of margins here. For paragraph, a good starting point is spacing at 1.15 lines. We're actually probably going to adjust that later, but that's a good starting point. Now mine, because I was already using this document before, It accidentally pasted everything at 10 points, so I'm going to adjust that to 12 points that I prefer. Scroll back up to the top here. Now this, when this pastes this in, it sometimes puts these little, I'm not quite sure what this formatting mark is. See this little gray mark? If you want to take care of that, it won't show up when you print it, but if you want to get rid of it, highlight it, and then you can go to Find and Replace in your Edit menu. It should automatically be in Find. Leave the Replace blank because you want to replace it with a blank, and hit Replace All, and that will replace all of those little sort of gray spacing things with just plain blank spaces, so that that's not making this ugly space. Now what we're going to do, you're going to group together any segments of verses that you want to be grouped together. You don't have to do this at all. You can just keep every verse its own individual thing. But I find that although a lot of them I keep separate, some of them, 2 or 3 verses together, kind of seem to make more sense because they're more of a complete thought, or you got a long sentence that runs across multiple verses. I prefer to keep them together. So you want to group those however you want to group them. As you can see, I'm adjusting so that it doesn't say Galatians 1:1, Galatians 1:2, Galatians 1:3, where I have them grouped together, but Galatians 1:1 through 2 and 1:3 through 5. And then between each verse or each set of verses, we're just going to add an extra space. So it's turning these into paragraphs. And that way, later on, if you want to, you can actually draw in dividers between these. But for now, we're just going to go through, group together anything that needs to be grouped together, space in between so that you have these nice, neat little segments of verses or sets of verses that are really easy to focus on their own. I'm just going to keep going through and doing this. I won't go through the whole book because you don't want to see me do this through the whole thing, so we'll go through about all of Galatians chapter 1, and when we get to 2, we'll stop there. If I were doing this for real, I would go on and finish the entirety of the book, but for now, we're just going to stop when we get to 2. So keep on going down, space these out. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through and select the references, and those I'm going to change to 10 point because I want to see them, I want to know what verse I'm looking at, but I don't want those to be prominent. I want the main text of the passage to be the thing that I'm focusing on. So we're going to just change all of these references to a smaller type. Of course, you can use whatever you want. Liberation Serif is the default in LibreOffice, in my word processor. That's the default font, and the default font size is 12 points, so it makes sense to me to keep my main text in 12-point type and the references in 10-point type. But whatever works for you, you can do this however you want. If you're using Microsoft Word, this might be in Times New Roman. You might prefer Arial if you're using if serif fonts are your preference. But you're just going to go through and you're going to make sure that the main text is in a pretty average font size, a pretty basic, straightforward font for text. And then all of these little references we're just going to make smaller so that they're there and they're visible and we can find them when we need them. We can tell what verses we're looking at, but they're not really taking over as the main thing here. Now there's another option you're going to see here in a minute. Rather than selecting everything individually, I have an option in my word processor here to use like a formatting paintbrush. And so once you've changed the format for one, you can collect that paintbrush and sort of paint that formatting onto something else. Sometimes that's a shorter, quicker way to do it. Totally up to you, whatever works for you. So now we have this broken down into individual verses or verse pairings, and the references are separate things. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick our keywords. So let's say that we've decided gospel is a keyword here. I'm going to go in, I'm going to pick another font. Again, you can use whatever you want here. I like to think about something that's going to be easy for me to trace over later. So here I've chosen Blackjack. We're going to make it bigger. You want to make sure it's big enough that you can trace over it later, because otherwise you're going to cause yourself some issues. And we're going to make this gray. I like to choose dark enough gray that I know it will print, but light enough that it's not going to be real prominent. Now, as you can see, this has done wonky things to our spacing. So we need to adjust that. So select everything, go into your paragraph type, change it to fixed, and you can set this to whatever you want. So I'm going to show you an example of what happens if I pick something too small. So we're going to go with 0.10. And as you can see, that really squished everything together to the point that it actually overlaps. So let's fix that. Let's see what it looks like with 0.20. That's looking a lot better. This would probably technically work. I usually find that somewhere about 0.22 or 0.4 works the best. So we're going to go in, we're going to adjust this one more time. We're going to change this to 0.24. And we're going to save it again. And now, as you can see, we have enough space to accommodate this without creating huge spaces between our regular text, so everything is now even. We don't have this crazy thing where there's a little tiny bit of space between some and then huge gaps between others. So we're going to continue to go through, and we're going to change every instance of the word gospel to be in this other font. This larger font that we picked, it's larger, it's a different style, and it's in gray, because what's going to happen is later on, once you print this out, you can use a colored pen or a fine point marker, and you can trace over this, and these keywords are going to really stand out, and they're going to look interesting to you. But because we're doing them in gray here for you to trace over later, you don't have to print out a bunch of stuff in a color ink. So we're going to keep on going through this. You could do this with as many different words as you want. I prefer to usually pick different fonts if I can. It doesn't have to be exactly the same word. You may decide, for instance, that faith and faithful are the same keyword and you can do them the same way. But any way around it, pick your keywords. You're going to go through here. You're going to format them all in something that's big enough for you to write on. And then we're just going to go through. We're going to make sure that everything from a section is on one page, and we're going to make sure that our references don't break across a line. You don't have to do that. I don't like it when my reference breaks across a line. So just make sure that all of the pagination and the paragraphs are all right, and then you're good to go. You can save that.